Our theme for the day is celebrating conversations and leadership. I think we've already begun on a good note, just within the confines of this space. We've had some good conversations on our tables, I hope. We've had some good speeches that have triggered conversations, whether it's about going district, whether it's about not going alone to a function, or whether it's about just trying to maintain your job by being yourself. Our next session will be a conversation that I believe will be exciting. I'd like to call on to my co-MC, Nelly Wakaba, to just guide us through it.
Are we all excited?
Yes.
Are we enjoying BOTEA?
Yes.
Our next session will be carried out by one gentleman that I have the pleasure of introducing. This guy, this gentleman, is an author, a writer, and an excellent communicator. A columnist, and he's been a Toastmaster for the last 4 years. Help me introduce John Kageshe from the Nairobi Toastmasters.
Thank you, Nelly. Good evening, everyone. Today we have been celebrating conversations and leadership. And we find ourselves tonight at the climax of the Best of Toastmasters, East Africa. And my purpose here is to invite our guest speaker, who, after speaking to us, we'll have a Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, the goal of our guest speaker is not just to write things worth reading, but to live a life worth writing about. Our guest speaker is intrigued by leadership and says that true leaders benchmark with imagination and destiny, while office holders benchmark with greed and history. At the tender age of 8, he was fascinated by speeches of great Africans like Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere. So much so that at 8 years, he would memorize some of their speeches. For example, at the Kenya School of Government, he is involved in training of the creme de la creme of Kenyan government leadership, with his focus area being in transformational leadership. Dr. Wale Akinyemi is an internationally respected and most sought-after conference speaker. He is also a prolific writer and has authored a number of publications and books on leadership. Toastmasters International is a global body dedicated to growing communication and leadership skills among its members in a practical way. As Toastmasters, we have the enviable responsibility to relentlessly deploy this agenda to endemic proportions through infecting as many as we can with it. The Best of Toastmasters East Africa is the annual premier event that serves to further promote this indispensable agenda. Our guest intends to propel us further and will talk to us today about communication and leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Wale Akinyemi.
I have never had a task as difficult as speaking in front of people who speak and talk about speaking and judge me while I am talking. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but one way or the other, I will. It's a real privilege to be here. Thank you very much for having me. And talking of leadership and communication, I am a passionate African, and I am so in love with my continent. And I refuse to allow people to call my continent a third world continent. I refuse it because when I worked in America, when I worked in England, nobody ever told me my brain was third world. All right? So I come from a country where, well, you could look at it, the only good luck we had in my country for many years was the name of the president. And my president said stealing was not corruption. So, and that is what makes me really upset about us, leadership. Because if you say you are a leader and nobody is following you, you are simply taking a walk. If you say you are a leader and people are following you because there are consequences for not following you, you are not a leader, you are an office holder. A there is a difference between a leader and an office holder. And I made up my mind that I want to be remembered as one of the leaders in thought in this African continent of ours. And so, how did I do this? The first thing I had to do was to communicate with myself that I was a leader. Because if you don't know who you are, you will answer to who you are called. If you don't know where you are going, you will get down where you are dropped. If you don't know the truth about yourself, every speculation becomes a possibility worth considering. And I decided I want to know, I define who I am. So I am a leader. Can't you tell the person sitting next to you, I am a leader, and there's no doubt about it? Tell somebody else, if you ever doubted my leadership, let your doubt end today. Because the truth is this, if you do not believe you are a leader, why should I believe?
There we go.
If you do not believe that you are a leader, why should I follow you? Is somebody hearing me today?
Oh, yes.
So I refuse to follow people who do not know who they are. And that's why I made up my mind. So the first level of communication was to communicate it with myself. And the way I was going to communicate this with myself was that I decided to set a standard for myself. I refuse to imitate the cheap. I am inspired by the expensive. I decided that I will not allow anybody to treat me like I am dirt. I decided I was going to carry myself around like a king, and the whole world will have no choice but to treat me like a king, just like you have done here tonight. So the way we carry ourselves around is what is going to give permission to people to treat us the same way.
Oh, yeah.
So I began to tell myself, Wale, you are not an ordinary person, you are a king. And then I began to read. I began to develop myself, because I learned many years ago that the person who does not read has no advantage over the person who cannot read. So I began to develop myself. I began to do that, and then guess what? I began to have conversations with myself. I began to talk about my dream, because many years ago, a Baptist minister in America had a dream, and I decided I was going to have my African dream. And I dream of an Africa where poverty is a choice and not a sentence. I dream of an Africa where unemployment is a choice and not a sentence. I dream of an Africa where my housemaid has the best education for her children, not because she's my housemaid, but because she's an African, and excellence has become the standard in Africa. I dream of an Africa where my driver will have the best health care for his family, not because he's my driver, but because he's an African, and excellence has become the standard of Africa. I dream of an Africa where nobody will look at us and ask you, bring your passport, and say, what are you doing here? I dream of an Africa where people will look at me when I come and they say, you are from Africa? Wow, how did you guys do it? How did you guys turn that continent around? How many people are dreaming of that Africa with me tonight? I dream of an Africa where, you know what, everywhere you look, you hear success stories, you see success stories. I dream of an Africa where people are lining up in front of our embassies all around the world, wanting to come to Africa, and then we are asking, what do you want to come and do in Africa? I dream of an Africa. How many people share my dream tonight? So that is the dream I have for Africa. And so I decided that, you know what, I am going to, now that I've communicated it with myself, I'm going to communicate it with the world. And so what did I do? I began to write. I got very active on social media. I began to share my thoughts around. And that's why, if you're not following me on Twitter right now, you have missed half your life. Y'all should be tweeting about this right now. That Wale is in the house. Is somebody hearing me today? So I began to communicate it. And then, let me round up by telling you another thing I did for myself. I went from America, I lived in America with my wife of 24 years. Taiwo. There she is. There she is. I remember I was being interviewed one day, they said, "What do you fear?" I said, "My wife." The fear of the wife is the beginning of wisdom. You know, and this is so important. I am so passionate about Africa, like you can see. And so I decided, I moved to Nigeria, and when I got to Nigeria, I did business with the government, and when it was time for me to get paid, nobody wanted to pay me. And I called the governor, he refused to pick my calls, and so I met with one businessman who had all these contacts. And I said, "Please help me talk to the governor." And he picked his phone to talk to the governor. And as he was about to call, he said, "What was the arrangement you had?" I said, "There was no arrangement." He put the phone down. He said, "Wale, come on, you're no more in America. This is Africa. Did you think anybody was going to pay you that amount of money without an arrangement?" I talked to somebody else, and they said the same thing. So I decided I needed divine intervention. So I went to look for a bishop. He was worse than all of them put together. My goodness. And so I walked out. One transaction, I walked out on $1.3 million, and the other transaction, my business lost $5 million. And people ask me every day, "How did you do that? Why were you able to say no to that?" And this is what I round up with tonight. I was able to say no because I had said yes to something else. I had said yes to being a role model in this continent. I had said yes to being a figure of inspiration. I had said yes to being a beacon of integrity. I had said yes. My yes was so strong. And when your yes is strong enough, your no will be easy enough. The reason we have corruption is because there are people who have not said yes to anything. So my question to you and my challenge to you tonight, what are you saying yes to? Because if your yes is strong enough, your no will be easy enough. And ladies and gentlemen, I have said yes to a great legacy. What is a legacy? Legacy is how you are defined when you are no more there to defend yourself. So on that note, I hope you will remember this many years to come. If your yes is strong enough, your no will be easy enough. Thank you very much.
Dr. Wale, give me one more round of applause, please. If your yes is strong enough, your no will be easy enough. We'll go to a short Q&A session. I'll ask a few questions, and then we'll open it to the floor for 2 questions, and then end with Dr. Wale one more time. Dr. Wale, clearly speaking, you're passionate, not just for Africa, but for speaking too. When did you discover you were a public speaker?
I don't know if I discovered. What happened was when I lost a lot of money, then people, people are fascinated by a comeback story. So when I lost money and began to do well again, then people would ask me to come and speak. My background is in demography and social statistics. I'm a researcher and a strategy consultant. So I was shocked the first time I read in the papers and they said I was a motivational speaker. I needed motivation myself at that point. So I think I just grew into it. It was just a default progression.
And which conversation catapulted you into leadership?
Anger. I've been very angry about the state of Africa. And I am one of those people who believe, you know what, why complain about something you are not ready to contribute something into? So I decided I will not have the moral authority to complain about what is happening in Africa if I'm not doing something personally about it.
To quote Chinua Achebe, when do you suppose the rain started beating us?
In Africa?
In Africa.
It is when we took our eyes off the content of the brain and began to look at the content of the pocket. That's where it changed. It was when it did not matter that you came in a car. It had to be a specific kind of car. It is when we began to use money we did not have to buy things we did not need, to impress people we did not like. It is when our identity came from things, not from within. Because, I remember one day my son was talking, and my mother used to tell me, "You talk too much, you talk too much," And so one day my son was talking, and my wife said, "You're talking too much," and I said, "Talking has given you the lifestyle you have." So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does, Dr. And speaking of business, one of the things before you come to the question, Toastmasters embraces and encourages mentorship. Now, you are a businessman, quite commendable businessman from what I've gathered. Comment on the relevance of mentorship in business.
It's so important. It is so important. Your mentor is a prophecy of your future. Because your mentor is that person whose past is your future. And you see, the wise person learns from the mistakes of others. The fool insists on making his own. And I have benefited greatly from mentors because they tell me, you know what, there's a landmine here. If you go this way, it's going to mess you up. And that's free. So I mentor a lot of people, but I also am mentored by people.
Which brings me to my question. Who mentors you, Dr.
All right. Do you want names or descriptions?
Both.
Let me give you descriptions. For the simple reason that I don't know if my mentors will be, like to be, thrown out there. I have a mentor. You see, I have different areas of my life and business, and at different phases, I have had different mentors. Okay? I remember when I was in America, I had a mentor who opened my whole thinking to doing business in America. I remember one day we had lunch together, and I brought up my cards to pay, and he said, no, Wale, I'll pay. And I said, come on, I'll do that, come on. And he said, no. So we had this back and forth, and then, you know how he shut me up? He said, do you have $1 million in your account you don't need right now? I said, no, sir. He said, when you do, then you come and buy me lunch. I said, coming soon. So at different stages, I have had different people come into my life to help me to, sometimes it's just people who would listen to my rantings. I remember, we all know what happened with one of our banks here recently, and that affected me. And, it was nice to have somebody I could sit down with who could just listen to my rantings. Sometimes that's all you just need. But having someone like that, having a mentor, is non-negotiable.
You left Nigeria having lost 6.3 million, and I'm talking shillings, dollars. Why did you come to Kenya?
That's a question I am looking for an answer for myself. So maybe if somebody can help me. But let me put it this way. By the time I lost everything, some people know the story. I couldn't hold a glass of water with my left hand. My hand was twitching like this. Left side of my face was twitching. I was told that's how people behave before they die. And I didn't want to die. And I tell you, I had a probably selfish reason for not wanting to die. See how beautiful my wife is? 24 years. I said, if I die, then some idiot will marry her. And I just couldn't cope with that thought. You know what I mean? But a friend of mine in Kilifi, actually, on a serious note, heard what I was going through, and he said, you know what, why don't you come and recover? So I came to Kenya. I was in Kilifi. I was so poor that the poor people called me poor. And that's not a good place to be. When people who are certified poor look at you and say, damn. That's not a good place to be. But that's how it was, and that's how my life, gradually, and I guess I'm in love with the country.
And this is how many years now?
Well, I was in Kenya 94 to 98, then I went to America, went to Nigeria, and then came back here in 2005, and I've been here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the floor for Dr. Wale? feedback.
Thank you very much for a very passionate and wonderful speech. Really quite exhilarating, Dr. Wale.
Thank you, sir.
My question, and it's really difficult to question a giant like you, is in the years that you've been speaking, after you had that big conversation with yourself, how close do you feel you are to infecting a critical mass of Africans with that dream, with that enthusiasm, so that that daybreak about which you dream will come to pass?
Thank you. Well, I don't know how close I am, but one thing I do know, I may not be where I want to be, but I am grateful I'm not where I used to be. Some of the landmarks for me right now are the fact that, I'll tell you some examples. I teach transformational leadership at the Kenya School of Government. Now, that is exciting. The fact that you cannot become a permanent secretary or rise to a particular level without going through my program at the Strategic Leadership Development Program here. That is very humbling. On Thursday, I'm going to be in Lagos speaking to leadership, the vice president and governors and all that of the country. That makes me, I'm happy, I'm grateful. But I was on a plane one day, and when the captain suddenly comes out, he's on autopilot, and he comes out and he holds one of my books and he says, "You've inspired me. I want you to sign this." And he's the captain. Or I sit down in the lounge at the airport and I look around and I see 3 different people holding 3 different books that I have authored. You know, so it may not be a big bang, but we are getting somewhere. We are getting somewhere. When I go to Kaviani Boys High School, I go to schools. You know, it's exciting to speak to the leadership at the United Nations, and then the next minute I'm in Mathare. All right? And I have people who have come out of Mathare and are now CEOs. You know, that excites me. So I may not be able to count, but I am focused on that one person. If I can, and that's why I run a program called Inspired to Inspire. If I can inspire one person to inspire another and to inspire another, I think I'm happy.
Thank you very much. We'll take 2 more questions. There's a gentleman there, and this one.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
My question is, on the road to success, and between yes and no, at in a distance of 100 meters, where do you place humility?
Humility is everything. Because the truth is, and what's the difference between arrogance and confidence? I tell you. Confidence says, I know I'm good, but my goodness, I am in an ocean of good people. Arrogance says, I know I'm good, and there's nobody else I count as important. They are different. And I am a very grateful person. Number one, I'm grateful for the fact that I have heard of people who did not lose as much money as I lost, who did not go through as much as I went through, and they never bounced back. So I am very grateful. I am very grateful for a country that has opened up to me. I'm grateful for the fact that one of the things I do, I write speeches for some people in power who I will not mention. And it's exciting watching television and somebody powerful is giving a speech and I'm telling my wife the next sentence before he says it because I wrote it. You know, it's I'm very, very grateful. And I'll be the first to say this. People say, and you know what, maybe if I give you certain dates, you will understand what I'm saying. If you saw me in, because when I came back, you know, and lost everything, I was living in Kilifi, like I said, and I couldn't afford a plane ticket from Mombasa to Nairobi. And that was a tall order for me because I had flown first class all my life. Now, I had these, the cheapest bus then was called Busways. You know, there was another one called Taufik. When you sit down in that bus, you know, you think you're going to jump out of the window. And there was a day I'm in the bus and there's a lady sitting next to me and she's got 2 kids. And without asking for my permission, she just gives me one to hold. So I spent the whole of the evening rocking a baby I don't know. All right? I'm rocking a baby I don't know. But you see, when I now look back at that, I am so grateful. Now, if you saw me December, because a lot of times you think it takes a long time. If you saw me December 2008, somebody from Nairobi, a friend of mine, sent 2,000 shillings for my family and I to have lunch. Christmas 2008. Now, today, the story is different. So when people ask me, how did that happen? I am the first to say, I must have had some help.
Very well answered. And final question here, and then we ask Dr. Wale one final question as we wind up this session.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
I can remember sometime in 2014 I was watching a live program. You were on one of our stations, I think it was KTN, and you commented on the youths in Africa,
yes,
that we are not saving and that we are eating our future. Since then till now, comment on our progress. How are we doing? Are we doing well? What can you advise us on the same? Saving and our behavior financially.
All right.
Yeah, 2 minutes, please.
All right. Well, let me say, I think the biggest problem with the youth in Africa, and hear me well, is asking for permission. I would rather apologize than ask for permission. A lot of young people are sitting down, not doing stuff, just looking for somebody, give us a job, give us this, give us that. You know what? I would rather you create something that does not work than to sit down perfectly. Look, let me tell you something. Some people love me, some people hate me, but one thing you will be sure of, nobody can ignore me. Why? I will always do something worth criticizing.
Oh, yes.
All right? So in terms of where the youth are, I think we've made some strides. There's a lot of youth programs going on now. So any youth who remains ignorant right now is doing so by choice. All right?
Thank you very much, Dr. The final comment from you, Dr. Share with the members of the audience who want to get the consulting industry. What would you tell them?
All right, thank you. If you want to get into consulting, it's very simple. As a consultant, we are hired to think. So if you want to get into this business, you must be a thinker. You must pump yourself with information. Let me tell you what my day is like. I read about 4 or 5 books every month. My biggest investment has always been in books. 4 or 5 books every month. I go to bed most days, especially if I'm not out like this, most days by 9:30, 10, I am asleep. But 2:30 a.m., I'm in my study. And that's when my day starts. So by the time most people are getting to work at 9, I have had a full day. So I get 2 days for the price of 1. Now that is so exciting for me. I am reading, I'm researching, I'm writing, I'm doing all that stuff. Again, because let me tell you what, I know the health people may disagree with this, but if you sleep 8 hours a day, by the time you are 75, you would have slept a cumulative of 25 years. How do you stand before your maker? And for 25 years, the only thing written about you is, and the guy slept. So I don't place too much of a premium on sleep, all right? And so I would say, make sure you're developing yourself. Make sure that you are investing heavily in your mind, and don't be scared to question status quo, because that's what we get paid for. We get paid to see the other angle. We get paid to see beyond the curve. So make sure you do that, and above all, make sure you are solidly in Toastmasters, because people love when you are able to communicate. Let me tell you something that happens. I've had this with quite a number of organizations. You know what they do for me? They will hire me. Now, I know Nation said I was, in the newspaper, they said I was one of the most expensive speakers in the country. I was very upset. I said, I don't want to be one off. I want to be undisputed number one. And eventually, I think they said that. But the point I'm making is, these companies have hired me and paid me for a full day to train me on what they want me to come and tell their people. No, did you get that? You pay me for a full day to tell me, so please, this is what we want you to come and train. Why? Having the facts is not enough. Being able to communicate the facts is where the action is. So as you get the facts, make sure you develop your ability to communicate those facts, and you will do well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wale. Come on, more round of applause. The one and only Dr. Wale.
Something interesting I read of one of your Facebook posts is when you say that when an eagle hangs around with chickens, it forgets how to fly. And it reminded me of this quote by Alexander Harvard in his book, Virtuous Leadership. And it says, don't flutter around like a hen when you can soar like an eagle. I do believe as Toastmasters we're well on that journey to becoming those eagles. And as we've been told today, be inspired by the expensive. Your mentor is the prophecy of your future. I think it perfectly aligns with the mission we all want to accomplish as Toastmasters. So thank you very much, Dr. Wale, for that very relevant and inspiring speech.